Welcome to the Collecting the Past podcast. Funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities and in partnership with the Flannery O'Connor Institute for the Humanities, this project paired students from Georgia College with community members to collect oral histories from individuals who either lived in Milledgeville during the heart of O'Connor's writing career or whose lives were shaped by events that took place during this period. Our goals with the project are to expand the existing historical narrative of our town by documenting unwritten life stories and creating a public digital archive. As you'll hear, the students had fun creating their own podcasts in the style of their choice. Like our narrators, each episode has its own personality.
All right, well, right here, my name is Axel Hawkins. I have Al Matysiak right here, and we're going to be talking about the Sacred Heart Catholic Church in Milledgeville. And so, Mr. Matysiak, if I could just get a little bit of your background, tell me where you were born and raised and all that.
Okay, I was born in Germany during the war. My parents were part of the prisoners of the Germans and worked on a labor farm. And I was born during that time. After the war, we were liberated, and in 1951, Dad explored the possibility of coming to the United States, which we did. We had to have a sponsor. We moved. Came to Jones County, which is Gray, Georgia, and lived there for about a year and a half. Dad was kind of got a little antsy about being there because being from Polish, he couldn't speak any English. And I was very fortunate, me and my sister, because the family that sponsored us, they had a son and a daughter our age. So we were able to communicate with them, and within a year, I was able to start school. So we stayed there for about a year and a half, and Dad got, as I said, he got kind of frantic about it and wanted to move, wanted to go somewhere where he could have some friends. And originally he was talking about maybe going to Chicago, but for some reason, we started coming to Milledgeville to the church at Sacred Heart. And in 1953, Regina O'Connor, Flannery's mother, had a farm, and she was looking for some help in the dairy part.
Yeah.
So next thing I knew, we wound up in Andalusia farm in 1953. And we stayed there pretty much through 1957.
Okay, so that would have been 4 years or so?
About 3.5 years or so, yes.
Yeah. Well, all right. And what was that experience like, moving to Milledgeville and living at the famous Andalusia farm?
Well, the experience was great. I loved it being there on a farm. Of course, I was still not even a teenager at the time when we came over here. And I was able to help them during the summertime when not going to school, help them with the chores at the farm, helped with the milking, and also during the summer, worked in the fields, driving the tractor, bringing in the hay and different things of that nature for the cattle for the wintertime.
Yeah. Well, all right. I never realized that Andalusia was a dairy farm for some reason.
It was. She started. Well, that's the reason I think Dad came over here is because she needed some help in the farm with the milk. She started it, but I think after we left, she pretty much. I don't know how long it lasted, but I think she eventually got out of the dairy farm and went into the beef cattle.
Oh, okay. I know that's become more popular the past couple of years, especially.
It has a lot of the dairy people.
Yeah. Well, all right. And so you kind of mentioned that the church really was what brought you to Milledgeville to begin with. How long have you been attending the church, really?
Here since 1953.
Okay, so you've been here over 60 years now, I guess.
Pretty much, but of course we didn't live in Milledgeville this whole time, but we were close enough when Dad left Andalusia, he went back to Gray, to another dairy farmer, and we commuted between Milledgeville and Gray, coming to church on weekends, on Sundays.
Okay. And so you kind of lived in Milledgeville at different times and Gray at different times?
That's correct.
All right. And how would you describe the parish community in your youth? Would you describe it as close-knit or anything in particular?
I think back then, I think it was fairly close-knit community. There weren't that many families at the time, but I think as the time grew, families moving in, especially your people from like Philippines and different nations came in here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you mentioned something that always interests me. Generally, people in America tend to describe themselves as Irish Catholic, Cuban Catholic, something like that. A lot of the Catholic community in America has been kind of rooted in immigration. Would you say that, at least at the time that you were a child, a lot of the families at Sacred Heart had an immigrant origin?
At the time that we came down, there were only, that I can recall, were actually two other families that came, lived in Milledgeville at the time that we were down here. Mm-hmm. One was from, I think, Czechoslovakia, and the other family was from Lithuania.
Okay.
And us, and as far as immigration, that's the only three that I can recall at that time.
Okay. All right. And so the war had a big impact on that in a way?
I'm sure it did, because, after the war, Germany became overrun with a lot of displaced persons. Mm-hmm. This is the way we came over to the United States under what they call the DP program, displaced persons.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, do you have any specific memories, good or bad, that happened at the church during your childhood?
Not anything that's bad that I can recall. Of course, when it came to Milledgeville, Sacred Heart had a Catholic school.
Oh, it did?
Yes, and it went through the 7th grade, and when we moved down here in 1953, I was very fortunate that I just finished 6th grade in Jones County, and moved into the 7th grade, and stayed the whole year at Sacred Heart School. And of course, my sister, she was a couple of years younger, so she was in the 5th or 6th grade at the time. So once we graduated, I had to go to a public school and wound up coming, believe it or not, Peabody High.
Oh, yeah.
Which was down here at Georgia College at one time.
Well, all right then. And would you say, I know my own grandparents have talked about this, would you say it was more common back then for Catholic families to send their kids to a Catholic school at least as long as they could?
If it was convenient. Mm-hmm. If it was convenient, I would say yes.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. Nuns were strict, but that's typical of a Catholic school anyway.
Yeah. Well, all right. And so something that's always interested me, my grandparents have told me a lot of stories over the years. Catholics were often faced with prejudice and discrimination in the South, really until fairly recently. Do you remember that being a problem in Milledgeville, or were Catholics more generally accepted in the community?
Living on a farm like we were, we didn't really have any close contact with the cities, with the township people, so we didn't have any problem personally.
Oh, well, that's good to hear then. And then kind of on that same note, something I heard my entire life was that JFK's election in 1960 as the first Catholic president was really like a watershed moment. People were celebrating it. I know my great-grandparents actually had a picture of him hanging in their house. Do you remember Kennedy's presidency, his election, or any impact it might have had on our local Catholic community?
Keep in mind, I was still a young kid at that time, so I was influenced. I was glad to see him get elected, but as far as being influenced or having any problem, no, I did not.
No, okay. Well, all right then. And then the last question I really have written is that the 1950s and 60s were a really big time of social change, especially in America and especially in the South. Do you remember any big changes or impacts that had on the parish?
Not that I can recall it at this time.
Okay.
No.
And then I think the Vatican II was in the late 60s, I want to say. Do you remember any time that the Mass might have switched over from Latin to English or anything like that?
I remember the Mass being switched over, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was I think that some people, they loved it because they could get back and understand, and the priest would be saying the Mass in English.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing that changed also is at the time the priest was facing away from the people in the crowd, and they turned the altar around where he would be facing the crowd, and I think that was a tremendous impact on people that were coming to Mass. They enjoy. I think they liked it. Now, there's some people that would probably still enjoy the Latin Mass, but majority of them went along with the change.
Yeah, I know my grandparents really talked about it changing their life when the priest started facing towards them.
Exactly.
But yeah.
It made a difference.
Yeah. Guess it made it feel a bit more welcoming in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, all right. I don't have any more written questions. I had one that was in my mind I was going to ask you. Let's see if I can remember. Trying to think. So, have you been a member of Sacred Heart pretty much since since I think it was 1953, or have you went to different churches throughout the time?
No, basically we were members of the church from that time on. Of course, we visited other churches in Macon and other locations, but we were members since 1953. As a matter of fact, my wife and I married in '61.
Oh, yeah.
In this church. She was a Baptist, I was a Catholic.
Oh, yeah.
But I convinced her, I said, if we're going to get married, let's get married in our church.
Uh-huh.
And then about, I don't know, within a year, she converted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She told me one day, she said, well, if I'm going to go to church with you, I might as well go ahead and convert and be a Catholic.
Yeah. That's so funny. That's the exact opposite of my family. My daddy was Baptist, and my mother was Catholic, and they got married in a Baptist church. Then when I was maybe in high school, I had started going to Catholic churches when I was a bit older, and then my dad converted, and they had to get remarried in the Catholic church. It was a big thing.
Well, a lot of people do that. They'll get married in a Catholic church and then get married in whatever denomination the other party is. But we got married at a Catholic church, and there was no quarrel from her family or my families, and everything went well.
Oh, that's good to hear. There was a quarrel in my family. Well, all right. And then I was wondering, this just popped in my mind, were there different priests that came at different times that you remember having an impact?
Well, yes, some of them did. I know, I think Father Toomey, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was the one that, when we first came to Milledgeville, was the pastor. And I was an altar boy at the time.
Oh, yeah.
He invited me, and I participated in the services. And the other priests, pretty well, they came and left. I know Father Hugh Marion, who's the Monsignor now. I really liked him very well.
Yeah. Well, all right then. And speaking of being an altar boy and kind of service in the church, was Knights of Columbus or Council of Catholic Women, were those things a big part of the community, or did they come on later?
That came on later.
Okay. Well, all right then. I think that's really all the questions I have, unless there's anything else you'd like to let me know about your experience.
Of course, there's a lot of changes was made at the church here. The addition of the Flannery O'Connor Hall, the building of the Sunday school building, the Aquinas Hall. At one time, right at the Aquinas, where the Aquinas Hall is, the Sunday school building is, that's where there was a two-story building, and that's where the school, the Catholic parochial school was located, with the 3 nuns living there.
Oh, okay. I did not know
Yeah,
that.
the house was moved, and they built that.
The Aquinas Hall.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And what was, and I can't believe I forgot to ask you a question about this. So you mentioned Flannery O'Connor, and you mentioned your own experience living in Andalusia. But I know that I've heard different reports that she was kind of a more quiet figure in real life. Do you remember her kind of in the community?
Not in the community, I don't. Because living on the farm, I did not see her that often. Most of the time, we lived in a house, if you remember where the White House is at the pond, and there was a house across the pond, and that's where we lived for part of the time that we stayed in Andalusia.
Yeah.
And we just had to walk back and forth to work, to the barn. And then after people that lived in the house on the property next to the, what they call trying to think of the name of the guy that,
I think I know what you're talking about.
but anyway, the house on the property, we moved over there and lived there for about a year and a half.
Okay.
So the only time I had any communication with Flannery would be I would see her from time to time, especially in the evenings, feeding, going out to the pens and feeding her pile of friends, as I call them.
Oh, yeah.
I had more to do with Ms. Regina than anything else, because she was, the ramrod of the farm. And, anytime she needed anything, had anything to do, a lot of times she called on me to tell me what she wanted my dad to do, translate to him what she was expected him to do today.
Yeah. Well, all right. I like the way you put that she was the ramrod of the farm.
Well, pretty much, yes.
Well, yeah. Well, all right. I don't have anything else I can think of to ask. It's been very nice to be able to speak to you today. And, I guess I'll stop the recording now.
Okay.
We hope you enjoyed learning more about the people and historical events connected to Milledgeville and Flannery O'Connor in this episode. If you or someone you know has stories to share related to either of these topics, we'd love to hear them. In addition to documenting community memories, you'll also help us preserve your story for future generations. Visit our website, collectingthepastmilledgeville.wordpress.com, to learn more.